Welcome, everybody. Good to see you. And I had published and gone around in the notice, that flyer that comes by email, that we would discuss what's going on at the University of North Florida. The federal government has withdrawn a $7 million grant for teacher retention because one of the ways in which they were going to, and they're thinking about retaining teachers, is by recruiting more teachers from the LGBTQ community, from minorities, and so on. And so that grant, like so much from the federal government, has gone away. So that's topic number one, and I'd be curious to know hear your take on that. The second, I was talking to Kathy about what's called the Gish Gallop. It was a phrase coined by a friend of mine, Eugenie Scott, founder of the National Center for Science Education. She was debating on TV against a creationist by the name of Dwayne Gish, who believes that the narrative in Genesis is historical truth. And Gish began to, in a machine gun fashion, spout all sorts of untruths and phony, false, fake ideas, and spewed them out so quickly that she was unable to respond in any cohesive way and couldn't respond to all of them. So we are being bombarded, I feel, by machine gun fashion by so many different foolish ideas, that fake ideas based on myth and falsehoods, that it's hard to respond to all of them. The one that has caught my attention most recently relates to them because of my amateur linguist non-credentials, is what's going on with language. Now, we noticed very early on that while we know it as a fetus, our opposite number calls it a baby. That we call them public schools, they call them government schools. And that we call them transgender people, and they call them tools of Satan. And of course, the ultimate item that calls our attention to it is the dispute that the Associated Press, that I think has taken a very brave stance, is saying we're calling it the Gulf of Mexico and we don't care what you say. But the idea of changing it, we know it as the Gulf of Mexico, they want it to be the Gulf of America. And so I'm eager, if you have any other examples of linguistic changes. Aldous Huxley in Brave New World, and Orwell has written extensively about this. We think in terms of language. And have you seen other examples where our language is being controlled and ultimately our thoughts through that language?
Well, woke is clearly.
That was what I was thinking.
You know what? That's a good one.
What's negative about being woke?
Yeah,
I mean, you're aware that you might say something that's politically offensive, and so that's bad.
Yeah.
Right.
That you don't want to offend anybody. So I mean, just taking that word and making it negative is an interesting one.
Good point. Any other changes that you've seen?
There's a case before going up for one of the major courts. There was a white woman who is claiming discrimination because she had a gay boss and she was demoted, and a man was put over her, and it turned out he was also gay, so she's claiming it's reverse discrimination. And one of the courts has decided that if we have these standards for the minority, there have to be standards for the majority as well, and therefore they're expecting now an entire flood of white woe is me discrimination suits.
Let's go back for a minute. What is Trump's purpose for changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America?
I think he's just he's lighting little fires for all the grassroots people to fight over. I think it's meaningless. He can't make that stick. That's up to the world how they want to call it. Okay, that's not up to the. Huh?
He's just trolling.
Yeah, that's all he's doing. He's creating fires for everybody to fight over and ignore the bigger things that he's doing. That's all he's doing. It's a distraction. It's a distraction.
Don't you think?
I think the best you can do.
Don't you think it's also ultra-nationalist that he's trying to bring in?
Sure.
A nationalism that's going to...
Everything he does is to appeal to the nationalist fervor in this country. But
It's
but
not even patriotic.
these are things that he cannot make stick. I'm certain his advisors have told him he's not going to make the not the immigration, the citizenship, first citizenship. He's not going to make that stick. There's no way that's going to stick.
There's some secondary thoughts on that, my dear. If you listen to the strict scrutiny from this week, they're talking about the when it's been used in the past, but some of the arguments that are being put forward, should they go, and God knows we have Alito and Clarence Thomas up there, okay, to say nothing of Amy Coney Barrett, and the bootlicker there, what's his name? Kavanaugh, that it could actually, they're trying to undo the Civil Rights Bill. And one of the ways to do that is to eliminate citizenship for the blacks in this country. And if they're all born of people who were brought here forcibly and therefore none of their children have done an oath to this country.
But the leader of the American Civil Liberties Union said that is the one case that he has no doubt that we're going to win. The ACLU will win. That's what he said. He's the head of the ACLU, and he said I never go out on a limb and predict whether we're going to win or lose. He said, but this one we will win. He said only 2 Supreme Court justices will vote against us, and that is Alito and Thomas. He said all the others, even the conservatives, he said they're not going to go along with this.
From your lips to God's ear, because if he can change one line of the Constitution, he can change anything.
Yeah, but like I said, I have confidence also it will fail. It's just more red meat to throw out there. Get people fighting over it is all it is.
Yeah, I think they're trolling.
Yeah, that's all.
There were
They're
2
trolling
major.
in almost everything they say because they really have no plan.
They had
Just
2
throw it
major.
against the wall.
Well, I disagree that they had no plan. They have a plan. Their plan is fascism.
Their plan is Project 2025.
Which is fascism.
And they're going
That's fascism.
down
Right,
the
okay.
list.
Exactly.
They have a plan. I admire them for that. I criticize the Democrats for not having a plan, but they definitely have a plan, and they are implementing it. They
The
have
New
a
York
plan, and they're
Times.
implementing
The New
it.
York Times gave op-ed space to 2 major conservative legal scholars putting forth the arguments in the New York Times, and there
Arguments for
was
what?
nothing for this birthright citizenship. So the number of signatures on the other side, the amicus briefs on the side, is a growing list, something to be worried about.
Oh, in regards to what Dave said, yes, they do have a plan. We all know that plan is Project 2025. They are going so forcefully and so robustly forward, haphazardly with that plan, that so many programs are being cut. Back to Meryl's original thought with us today with college monies, they're going so robustly that monies for HBCUs, historically black colleges, were cut dramatically over the last week. And so because of pushback and fight back from communities and everyday people like us, I believe within the last 24 hours, they have re-implemented those programs, which goes back to something that you were saying a week ago, that there's so much flip-flopping, there's so much cutting and then, oh, whoops, we didn't mean to do that, happening constantly on a daily basis, going at it, like Elon Musk says, with a chainsaw, and then getting the pushback from the public and reinstating these monies for the people who are fighting for it. So it's very important that people like us are making those phone calls, raising our voices, showing up at the offices and saying how we feel, because it isn't changing things drastically, but they're hearing it, and some things are changing. And that's important to me, that these historically black colleges are getting their money back, because I also read an article that some of them could be closed. 80 or 90 of them could be closed within the next 40 years. And we don't want that. We want these schools to be open. We want our community educated, right? We want an educated community. We don't want to dumb down America.
We don't want the blacks educated, though.
Yes,
God
we do.
forbid.
Of course we do.
Well, I
And we
think
need
they
to
want to
stand
dumb
up
down.
for
I think they want
justice
to dumb
for all.
down
She's being
all of
sarcastic.
America.
I'm being
Oh, I
sarcastic.
know,
That's
I know.
their-
And I'm
their
being
attitude.
firm back. I
I
understand you're
think
being
the
sarcastic.
objective one of the objectives of fascism is to dumb down the entire country.
Exactly.
The entire
That
country.
is one of the objectives.
They don't want the intellectuals in this country. They don't want that.
Absolutely.
They don't want intellectualism. They don't want
Didn't at one
knowledgeable
point
people.
Trump say that he loves the uneducated?
Oh, yeah,
But
yeah.
He said that years ago. So
But actually, the first person that said that was the Republican Santorum from Pennsylvania.
So I think we
he
need
said it
to-
when he was running for president. Yeah.
I think we need to try to grasp what the bigger picture is and not the little daily, what he calls flooding the zone, which takes your attention away. And I'll point out something that recently happened. A judge chose not to support the requests by the unions through the federal hires that had been laid off and fired and terminated, because she said, and it was Judge Chuckin, who we all know is a righteous judge, has worked really hard, and her comment was, I have no authority to make a decision in this area. There's no standing for me. You need to take your case to the NLRB board.
National Labor
The
Relations
problem
Board.
with that is there is no NLRB board because Trump administration terminated all of them.
yeah.
So he's so far, and it's not him. I don't give him a lot of credit for big picture, but the people around him,
Around
the
him.
2025,
People.
the director of the OMB, and all these people are a month ahead of everyone around here. Whether it's like Meryl and I were talking about with our education, they want to get rid of the Department of Education.
Right.
They want to get rid of public schools. Well, if you starve them by lack of funding for them, they'll die. So before we get a chance to ponder, and this is what Democrats will do around this room all day, is talk about all the woulda, coulda, shoulda stuff. They're moving forward quickly, and before the end of today, another crazy presentation will happen. You guys heard about the, I'm going to give you, for $5 million, I'll give you an easy access to become an American citizen.
Oh, yeah.
The gold card.
Yeah, Russian oligarchs
Yeah.
Well,
can
well,
come and pay their
and
$5
that I
million and
believe he will get
be
through.
housed in America.
He doesn't have to
And-
get through it. He can just do that.
It's getting through it.
Yeah.
That I believe he probably will get through. But if you read that on through, what he's doing, he's creating more of his own people, the oligarchs.
Right.
Those are his people. He wants to bring more of them in.
But I read that's not new, that they already
Oh, no,
had
other-
something like
Yeah.
that in existence already.
They already.
Other
I bet they've
many
already got
other countries-
legislation
Upping the
written.
game and charging more.
I bet they already have legislation written.
We have
Yeah.
one that's
Probably.
$1 million investment. If you make $1 million investment, there's a fast track to citizenship, or a $500,000 investment in an area that needs investment. And so we do have that right now.
But that's probably nothing wrong. Italy has something similar to that. It's
Many- many
250,000.
countries- many
That-
countries.
That's okay. They're telling you invest in a business here, create jobs, and then you're more welcome. So I understand that a little bit, even though I'm becoming so anti-capitalism. So I can understand that. But this is just flat out buying the citizenship, is what he's proposing.
He
So-
also passed an executive order that puts every, capital letters, every independent agency directly under the president, which means he is now in charge of the SEC and all those private little agencies. And this is the first step toward the Fed. And that was outlined in 2025, and they have already accomplished steps 1 and 2. So just to be aware of that. And as far as the money goes, Elon Musk has just invested $2.5 million, I believe was the figure, not positive about that, but that was the figure I think I heard, into the Michigan special election.
Right.
Okay, so
buy another seat.
let's hope we stay under his radar.
Well, he bought his way to the top of our
Yeah.
country, and he's going to
What
continue
special
on.
election is happening in Michigan? Is
It's
that-
sort of like we have somebody that
Well,
I know what a
Congress.
special election is, but it's not a Congress.
No,
It's
I don't-
a Supreme
Yeah,
Court
it is.
seat
Oh,
of
Supreme
Michigan.
Court seat,
Like
okay.
a
Yes.
Oh, so
statewide.
it's state.
Yeah,
statewide.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, he's dabbling now.
Right.
It's
He
not
gives
just
money.
federal.
Control of the whole
He's
state.
dabbling in
Yeah.
state politics as
Well,
well.
just
as
see
federal.
what happened last night. The Republican House of Representatives, with a 10-hour effort, finally, by 2 votes, was able to push the beginning of the CR efforts through the House. And it was very interesting. If you paid attention to it, there were 4 Republicans that said, no, we're not voting for it. 3 of them were contacted by our president and changed their vote. An hour after that vote, a reporter talked to our president, who said, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't have anything to do with any of it.
That's because it's the mafia.
You mean he lied?
Yeah, mafia.
Yeah.
Well, that's a, one
laugh,
of the
but I'm not
votes
joking.
for the budget that passed yesterday. The framework for the budget that passed yesterday was based on, some of the congressmen said, Trump promised me that such and such would happen, and therefore I changed my vote.
Exactly.
How can anybody rely on a promise that's
anything
made
he
by
said.
Donald Trump?
Right.
I
Flips him
don't
over, he's
understand it.
lying.
Right. But the real takeaway is, as we've all spent a lot of time so far in being involved with, 1 seat in the House of Representatives matters right now.
So,
Just hands down. There was a great Zoom call the other night from the National Democratic group. They had a bunch of speakers, and there were people logged in. They had almost 3,000 people logged in from around the entire country.
Right.
And there were people from Wisconsin and Utah and Idaho and California pleading and begging for us in Flagler County to be the voice of reason, the voice of sanity, to realize we're not just voting for our community with getting the seat flipped, but the entire country.
Right.
I have
So-
friends in Oregon that sent Josh Wheel money.
Yeah.
Sent them $50.
It's an amazing opportunity.
Well, the country's counting on us so much. We all do need to rise up and do whatever we can within our power, whether that be door knocking, phone banking, texting, talking to a friend or neighbor, talking to people at the grocery store. If all of us can talk to one person outside of our household at the grocery store or somewhere, we can double our numbers.
Right.
But it's just going to take a little, talking and explaining. And I, just went out to my daughter's work before I came here, and I made sure that several of her coworkers had one of these cards. It's within my, power. And at my free little library that I have in my yard, I have some cards. So if anybody comes, they can take one. So just little efforts that we can all do matter.
On the question of the continuing resolution, and so what I've read is what they passed was a framework. I'm not exactly sure I understand where we are and what the possibilities are. I was under the impression from the journalists that I have been following in my echo chamber that the Republicans didn't have much chance of passing a CR without Democrat votes. Is that still the case?
There's something called that reconciliation thing.
Yeah, well, that'll be between the Senate and the House is reconciliation.
Right.
But there are Republicans who are opposed because it's spending too much will increase the deficit.
Right.
There are still a few honest deficit hawks in the Republican Party.
Right.
It all depends on if they're swayed by the mafia.
Yeah, okay, and that's what's
And
going to
we
happen.
know what's
By the
happening.
way, we know
Over
about
and over again.
yeah, and we
So-
all know the threat of I'm going to make sure that you're primary.
Both,
Oh, yeah.
both,
That's not it
said.
now.
No.
No.
both Dana Milbank and Vance from Joyce Vance, I think it is.
Joyce, yeah.
Yeah.
White Vance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, oh, yeah.
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 Christine.
Both of them have suggested, and I wholly support, that the Democrats, what the Democrats can do now, the best thing that they can do, and I believe it right now, is nothing.
Carvel said that.
Carvel.
Carvel said that.
Yeah, and Carvel came in. Milbank did it about a month ago. And when I read Carvel's article, I said to my wife, "I can't believe when James Carvel steals my ideas." You know? But he was using the analogy of the rope-a-dope with Ali, and I really firmly believe it. Let them do it. Let them live with it. Don't take any responsibility for what it was. And when people see what the result of this is, the midterm election will go the way we need it to go. But we have to let this happen, and it's not an easy thing to do.
Right.
And the other thing I feel a little guilty about is this, when I say that. So the government gets shut down, and I don't get my Social Security check. I can afford it. And I apologize to the people who can't. So I take this very firm stance, but in the back of my mind, I'm knowing this is going to really hurt a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with the people who voted for him hurting that way.
I am
don't
too.
feel
I am
bad.
too, but it's not
I
gonna-
don't
it's
feel
not
sorry
gonna-
for them.
It's not
I
going to be
feel-
limited.
I
It's not
feel
going to be
bad
limited
for-
to them.
Right. I completely agree with you and hear you, and I feel for the ones who got it and
Right.
knew better, but the ones that didn't listen, if they hurt for a while, I'm okay with that.
I
30
think
days, most of us can do. More than 30 days, forget it.
Yeah.
Forget it.
Federal workers,
No
especially.
mortgage
who voted for
money,
him.
no grocery
Yeah, federal
money.
workers who voted for him
Federal
are
workers
now,
who voted for him have
pounding-
to be-
pounding the pavement.
So there's a great podcast called Legal Eagle, and he's a younger guy, does a phenomenal job of taking these things and simplifying them. And the CR is a action which can
By the way,
get through
continuing
the
resolution
Senate
in lieu of a
without
budget.
the 60 votes, but there are restrictions and limitations to it. And a couple of them are it can't add new money. It's only a big picture, like they were talking about extending the tax cuts. Well, the tax cuts are already law with a 2025 extension. So the CR could extend that further. And it can manipulate already approved money. The other issue that's happening, I believe, next week is the extension required for our annual spending budget expires. I'm going to say the 1st of March or somewhere around that time, which is the 14th, which is a separate conversation, and that's the one that they believe that the Democrats, which we did the last time, partnered with them to do that 1 month or 2 month extension of funding the government. And that's why those conversations get a little mixed.
Yeah, but I think Hakeem Jeffries will not support.
Not this time, and he said so.
Raising the debt limit. And
Right.
that's
But there are
separate.
Republicans, House of Representative Republicans, that consistently every time vote against
Yeah.
that because they don't like
They're the spending
the
harms.
budget.
Yeah.
The thing that I cannot get in my head, and this is part of that critical thinking, we all live by some level of budget. You have enough money to survive a period of time. Some of us don't. But we all know what we do each month, each week, each day, and how we afford it is based on the income and the expenditures. That's kind of basic 101 living. So how is it possible that the House of Representatives and the Republicans are convinced they're going to cut the budget by raising the debt ceiling, give everybody this huge tax break?
They don't want to give everybody a tax.
Well, but my
everybody.
point is,
Yeah.
everybody will get something,
They
but the
will,
rich
yeah.
will get a lot.
Yeah.
It doesn't pass the math test. It just doesn't. You can't stand there and say, and I heard guys this morning frustrated with what was going on because they know they're calling it. They're holding a light to it and saying, look, you can't raise the debt ceiling $4.5 trillion and not have some additional income from somewhere that's coming in. And this is where Trump is holding this tariff lie
Oh,
in
yeah.
front of us of, we can bring in like his illustrious president that was assassinated in his second term, tariffs. Tariffs are going to make us rich. We don't even need to pay taxes. It's not going to happen.
It's not the way it
It's
works.
not how I can run my household. I don't know about anybody else.
I agree with you in many ways, but comparing a government budget and a household budget is like, if you're a good airplane piston engine mechanic, it doesn't mean you know much about jet engines.
Of course.
They're very different, and I think household budgets and even company budgets, as opposed to the government is an entirely different animal.
But the concept is the same.
Okay, the concept is the same, but they're still...
they're not accounting for that.
Yeah, they're still... And again, the government has the power to print all the money they want.
Well, the
to
thing
borrow all
is
the money
how
they want.
come that is the most important thing, is to give the rich these tax breaks?
Yeah.
It's because that person wants it, but he has also been alleged, and he's received money from people that we couldn't get to the bottom of. The thing that happened over in Italy just before he stepped in the office there, $5 million was it or something?
The family has made $80 million since he was inaugurated.
I know. So, but this was gifts given to him, and supposedly back in the 80s he was seen to be a useful idiot by the Russians.
Yeah.
So this is it coming to fruition.
You think that's changed?
Huh?
You think that's changed? You said back in the 80s he was a useful idiot for the Russians?
I'm just saying that that's how long
That's
this
how far back
plan
it
has
goes.
been in effect.
Yeah.
And this is it coming to fruition. So any of these individual things really don't matter, because when he has all the power and has the purse with the power, what difference does it make?
And I want to bring up the fact that it's affecting the media right now. We just lost the Joy Reid show. It got canceled. Lester Holt got fired. All these people are not getting their jobs back when suddenly the rest of the world comes to, its senses. These people's career have been affected. People who just because they may have reported stories that were negative to the administration and the person whose name I will not say, through all of it, these people's lives are at stake. Our ability to get the information we want and need is at stake. Associated Press banned now from being a part of the press.
Power.
Right.
Going to control the press. And he's doing that.
Youngest and
Sorry,
stupidest
that was
press
my
secretary ever.
Yes.
We both raised.
So imagine this, and I have this, and I'll send it that we can put this up. In 1990, there were 66 billionaires in the United States. You want to guess how many there are as of 2023?
It does.
748.
It's nothing
On
new with
your
the
dollar.
The rich get richer
On
and the
your
poor get
taxes.
poorer. This is not...
The low-income people in Flagler County, of which there's a huge number that are surviving on the ACA and Medicaid and support, are going to get touched. They're going to be impacted, and we somehow need to inform them that this is all smoke and mirrors, and this is really happening, and try to get them to realize. I saw something the other day that said that only like 15% of the people in the lowest of incomes vote for a variety of reasons. They can't get to the polling places. It's restricted. Whatever. They don't have knowledge to it. They don't have the source of information, and yet they're the ones getting picked on.
Okay, so that raises then my difference with Vicky, and that is, do we need to convince people to vote for Josh Wheel, or do we need to spend more time just getting Democrats to the polls? How many people, what percentage of Democratic voters do you think are going to show up for the election on April 1st?
20, if we're lucky. 25, if we're really lucky.
And we need to work on that. Our community got about 85% Democrats out to vote during the fall election, and that's because we worked really hard on it. But also, we can't win with that. We need NPAs, and we need some moderate Republicans to realize what's going on, and it might not have been long enough yet to show them what you want them to see. So we don't know if they're going to come out and vote with us. There's people who are working on that. We have boots on the ground. We have people. I'm knocking on doors myself. So we're working towards that, and we need more people to work on that. But we don't know. Will we get these NPAs? Will some of these moderate Republicans realize what's going on? That Elon Musk is in there getting Social Security numbers that he shouldn't? And I would like to say something in regards to what you were saying about tariffs. My husband's a master electrician here in our community. As parts come in and they cost more because of the Trump tariffs, my husband is going to be passing that cost on to our community, onto the people who hire him. Our family is not going to absorb those costs. And when the bill is higher, and they ask why the bill is higher or what's happening, he's going to have to say to them, this is because of tariffs. I'm not absorbing the costs, and so I'm passing that cost on to you as a customer.
Our city.
So they'll learn that too
Yeah.
as the years go on.
Our city is getting ready next month. We should all pay attention to it. They just sent out a news release on the water, sewer. They're going to have multiple workshops and open forums. Do you think they'll absorb that 25% cost of aluminum and steel?
No.
Will we build the 3 new water plants?
No, we will.
We will pay
They're
for
going to
it.
need to know.
Well, it's supposed to be paid by impact fees, but of course the builders and developers are the ones who make donations to the politicians' campaigns, and they have diminished greatly the power of impact fees as an added cost, and prohibit people from being able to afford all the new houses that are being built. In the end, I believe we need politicians to step up and say to the developers and builders, no, you cannot build 3,500 and all the way up to 8,000 houses in Bunnell, and use our wastewater capacity and our freshwater capacity and lots of other non-governmental capacities. I don't know if people are finding their internet speed slower as more and more people are using the internet. Cell phone access, because more and more people are using the cell phone towers. We're just growing, to me, beyond bounds. But let me ask, if we get 85%, now it was a presidential election year,
Right.
2 years ago, at the last election. If we
Right.
get 85% of the Democrats to come out, how much do we need the NPAs and the Republicans?
Oh, I don't have that statistic.
Yeah, I suspect.
I'd like to
You
point
can
out
contact the Florida Democrats
no,
office
right.
to find that out.
I'd like to point out that other than mail-in ballots, there's only one day of voting. There is no early voting, and
No,
that's
that's not
going
right.
to
That's
affect.
not true.
No,
There is
there's a
no-
whole
There's
week
only
of
2
early
locations.
voting.
Oh, okay.
There's 2
I
locations to
Yeah,
early
the
vote.
Sunday
And I was like,
through
how
the,
are we going to get
the
them
week-
all there? You know?
Okay,
Yeah.
so if a
No,
high
there's really
information person, like the people sitting
Right.
around here,
Right.
are not clear on that, how about the medium information people and the low information people?
Well, that's the value of
And that's
knocking
what-
on doors,
Exactly.
of which I'm
Exactly.
continuing to knock on an abundance of doors, and was amazed at how many Democrats, registered Democrats,
Oh.
didn't even know there was an election April
Absolutely.
1st.
Exactly.
And people are confused because there's 2 elections happening right now. There's an election happening in the
Bunnell,
Bunnell and
Flagler Beach.
Flagler Beach area, and so people are getting them confused or thinking that's the only one and not even aware that there's a special election happening.
Right.
So I was putting out there on social media today, there's 2 elections, please make sure you vote in both, but
So Al referred
all
to
need
living
to-
in his echo chamber. We live in an echo chamber of high information voters, and we are overwhelming majority are low information voters or no information voters, and yeah, our job is to activate them.
so
Before we
in
go, I want to mention the boycott this Friday,
Yeah,
which is very important, not to buy anything from any online services. If you need gas, get it on Thursday. You need groceries, get them on Thursday. Spend no money whatsoever on Friday, as one way to let them know that financially we have some clout. We can hit them in the pocketbook.
Yeah, okay. I often wonder, because that's been said about gasoline and other things when prices were going out, so people didn't buy, but then the next day or 2 days they spent twice as much or whatever. But
I'll join you in that.
Yeah, the effort's a good one. In the end, and I don't think people understand, but the laws of the United States require corporations to increase their stockholder value. They're not there to serve us. They're there to serve stockholders. And so, if
That's
you're
why
happy
moving the
about your
post
election
office-
bill, buy stock in Florida Power. If you're unhappy about what the cost of things, buy stock. But in the end, they have an obligation, a sacred obligation, to increase shareholder value. And the rest of us, and this is one of the minuses of and the drawbacks of the capitalistic system we're in. But as flawed as it is, yes, as flawed as it is, it seems to work a lot better than most other systems.
That's why making the post office
As
a
a Bolshevik,
private
I could give you more.
institution with stockholders is not going to be good for this country.
And by the way, most prisons in Florida are private corporations, and many services that we think are coming
And
from the
that's
government.
all recent developments, actually. The privatization of prisons, that's in the last 20, 25 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's how we get by. Are you signaling to stop or to go? Keep
Yes,
going?
we'll wrap it up.
Yeah,
This
wrap it
is
up.
wrap it
Okay.
Can I say one key point in regards to what
Yeah,
Meryl
go
was
ahead,
saying
and then
about
we'll-
information?
then we'll conclude. Vicki's got the last word.
Even Kathy, who is pretty up on her information, and didn't know about the early voting. Here are the key points for the April 1st election. March 3rd is the voter registration deadline. March 20th, vote by mail enrollment. That's the deadline. March 22nd, early voting begins, and I believe there's only 2 locations, so please call the supervisor of elections and ask any questions you have. And election day is April 1st.
Or when they get their ballot.
April Fool's Day.
Yeah.
Let's
but
let
by
the
mail.
April Fool be on
Yeah.
them.
Vote by
when we
mail.
win.
Yeah.
I've already
Call.
voted.
I'll get
Me
right
too.
on that.
Nice been counted.
Thank you all for being here and participating in this discussion. And we want to give a shout out to the Rotondos and the Suncoast Media
Thank
for
you.
making all this possible. And
Glad
thank
to be
thank
there.
you and everyone for your flexibility.